If I was packing for a trip to the Antarctic, I would pack no more than one flamethrower.
Well, I mean...
Well, but if every guy brings one, doesn't that then mean there are 12?
And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 31. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite albums or playlists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this very podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my good friend...
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis, this week I watched the movie John Carpenter's The Thing, and you listened to The Magnetic Fields. But, Travis, there's very important news. I brought a friend.
Yes, you did. I see her right there.
Yes, there she is. Well, along with being a friend of mine, Ariel Powers-Schaub is a senior contributor to Ghouls Magazine, as well as their administrative assistant. She's an experienced horror movie writer and podcaster. She has a regular gig over at the Pod and the Pendulum, along with way too many guest spots to mention. I'm excited to hear just how John Carpenter's The Thing relates to the Saw movies and the Blair Witch Project. Ari Hellraiser, welcome to Exposing Ourselves.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi, welcome. I'm also excited to hear about how The Thing relates to the Blair Witch Project and all those other things. But
I'm excited to figure out what I'm going to say about that. So we'll all learn together.
None of it's scripted, so it's all good. I am first of all, I'm kind of aghast. We can kind of skip over the "what did we do last week" thing because we're recording this out of order, right? In order to get our special horror aficionado guest to talk about this amazing horror movie, we're recording this episode technically before episode 30.
Yeah.
So we're traveling to the future.
We're traveling to the future.
Or the past?
Well,
either way, really. We're doing like a Tenet situation.
It's all very confusing, and my brain has been hurting about it, and we'll
I have that effect on people.
We can just jump right into talking about this movie.
There is so much to say about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, let me give you a brief, if you haven't seen it, like Matthew hadn't until this week, The Thing, or John Carpenter's The Thing, if you are, I guess, accurate about it, is a 1982 movie that was based on a short story that was written way back in the 30s called Who Goes There, I believe. And it's actually pretty accurate, even though a 1950s quote-unquote adaptation of the story into a movie, which was called Think from Another World, wasn't really super accurate. So this one, they kind of did it right. And man, this movie, it wasn't super successful at the time. It was made on about a $15 million budget, directed by John Carpenter, stars a really young Kurt Russell, and David Keith is in it. And or Keith David, I'm sorry, God. Richard Mazur is in it, and also Wilford Brimley, who I don't know. That's
Wilford Brimley with no mustache. That should be illegal.
I know, it's a very weird thing to see young-ish Wilford Brimley. I mean, but I feel like he was never actually young. But it has become a cult classic in that it's actually scary. The tension is palpable through the combination of pace and music and acting. It just and it uses amazing practical effects to bring this alien that is a shape-shifting alien to life. And the deal is, we're down in the Arctic, we're at this research station, and this alien that can become other things, it can change into any form that it absorbs. So if it digests a form, it can become that, like a dog or a person or any alien in the universe. And the concern of these people is that it's going to get loose and take over the whole planet. And so they kind of have to try to kill it and figure out who's an alien already. I love it. It's so good. It's one of my favorites. Matt, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to bury the lead here. This is a really fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things I didn't love about it, but overall, I mean, I'll tell you the first thing I didn't love about it. Man, I need a "Does the dog die" warning on the movie like this. Holy cow. What a start. What a start to that movie.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Actually, the real start of the movie is weird because Predator lifts it almost frame by frame 3 or 4 years later. We watched Predator.
I thought about
earlier.
that as we were, and maybe I discussed that. I don't know if I mentioned that.
I don't think you did at the time. I think you just didn't like it. But yeah, so anyways, really an odd beginning to the movie. There's this dog running across the tundra, and then there's this helicopter, and they're shooting at the dog. And now I'll read this a little bit here. The dog is clearly just like running towards his trainer, right? He's just like trotting, and then all of a sudden there's guys taking pot shots at it. They're throwing grenades. There's all kinds of like confusion, but it does really establish it super duper well. I actually was stunned with the location. So we were talking last week about how Legend, the location shooting or lack of location shooting really hurt it. This movie was shot on location, I guess, in Canada, but it looked like Antarctica to me. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else do I want to call out? These practical effects are unbelievable. It's funny because I just assumed it was Stan Winston because I was like 80s horror movie with unbelievable practical effects.
Kind of early for Stan Winston, actually.
Yeah, it was not Stan Winston. It was a 22-year-old guy who's Ariel, do you know his name?
Rob Bottin.
Yeah. Wow. And I guess he almost like put himself in a mental institution doing this movie.
He did have to be hospitalized for exhaustion when it was done. Yeah.
That is just absolutely unreal. Like oh my God, when they shoot the dog, I jumped. It was unreal. And then of course when the dog's face explodes, when the guy's arms get torn off, like there's so many great practical effects. It's hard to even like narrow it down to one or two that you think are the best ones.
The head falling off and turning into a spider is...
Oh, God.
You've got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah, right?
Iconic.
Yeah, it really is. Just unbelievable.
Well, and one of the things is, speaking of the dog, basically, I was watching it this time and watching the dog's performance. And that dog is so creepy to see a dog be so still. And like there are shots that are several seconds long, and it's just the dog sitting and looking. And you just don't see a dog do that. And so when you see that on screen, you're like, oh, there's something. Even though you don't know what the deal is with this dog, you know it's something. And,
yeah. And go ahead.
No, it also kind of works for when the helicopter is following it, trying to shoot it, and the dog's kind of just loping out, like you say, running to its trainer. It's just calm. It's not super worried or running for its life. It's just like, I'm going. I'm pretty sure this is going to work. And, it's thinking. It's like, I don't know. I love that aspect of it, too.
So Ariel and I have been texting a little bit this week. And Ariel, did you want to point out the incredibly creepy news story that came up this week?
Yeah, let me find it real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So this alien apparently landed on Earth, what is like 100,000 years ago or something, and has just been waiting in the ice, much like...
This 46,000-year-old worm discovered in the Siberian permafrost that scientists brought back to life this week. And I say no thank you. Haven't we all seen the thing?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear about this? And it's like, did it have the babies? Are we going to keep these worms alive now? This seems like a very bad idea.
I don't know, man. We got aliens this week, too. Like, I can't even be too fussed about any of it.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things like that where they find ancient bacteria that's like millions of years old, and they're like, oh, we're going to try to bring it back to life. No, you don't need to do that.
We've all seen Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
Right?
Nothing good happens from science.
I think it's the capitalism. The capitalism, that's the problem. Not the
Right, and
science.
that's the lesson we learned from Aliens is that whenever the corporations get involved and want to use something for as a weapon, that never goes well either. But one of the things that I liked about this movie, in addition, is that speaking of casting the dog, but the rest of the cast is also good because it's almost like Predator in that you get this perfect casting where every person is different. You don't have to spend a lot of time with characterization. You like Kurt Russell gets one scene where he's playing chess against a computer and
He blows up his computer. What, man? You're gonna
everything you need to know.
You're gonna be in Antarctica for the next 6 months, and you just blew up your computer on 3 weeks in. Man, that's a bad idea.
Well, it was cheating, so.
Yeah, Kurt Russell is very charming in this movie, though. Wow, like you get the full Kurt Russell experience.
You do, and it's like you want him to win, and as a movie fan, I am a fan of a happy ending, right? I hate nihilistic endings. There's movies like The Road or Wolf Puncher.
The
What was
Mist.
the real name of that movie?
Wolf Puncher?
Yeah, it was Liam Neeson.
Oh, The Revenant.
No, it wasn't The
Not
Revenant. It was, but he's out in the tundra fighting wolves.
Yes.
Oh,
The Revenant
What's that
was
called?
the bear one.
The Gray. The Gray.
The Gray. Oh, sorry.
Which I call Wolf Puncher because he's punching wolves. But and I talk about The Gray. I won't make you watch it, but the
thank
ending
you.
of The Gray is that he has this final battle with nature, right? Where nature kills his friend drowns him in a river, and Liam Neeson gets out of the river and he's gonna give up. He's gonna just lay on the banks of the river and die. But something in him causes him to curse God and crawl up the hill because he's not going to give up, and he crawls to the top of the hill and over the ridge and realizes he's in the wolf den of the wolves that have been trying to kill him all this time. And so this wolf and him face off, and both of them apparently die, and I hate that so much. And I would have been happier if, like in The Thing, you kind of have a I don't know what happens next ending, and if he had crawled up to the top of the hill and Liam Neeson found a road. There doesn't have to be anyone on the road, just have him find the road, and that would have been happy for me. But in this one, in The Thing, they defeat the alien, they blow it up, and you think he's won. And then you have this ending with him and Keith David looking at each other, and both of them are wondering if the other might be an alien, and they're probably both going to die or be frozen in the ice, but there's nothing to be done about it. And I just like that ending so much.
There's definitely some itchy trigger fingers there. So
It's so creepy. But Ariel, you are a horror movie expert. You said this has some connections to other horror movies?
So Matt said that as a challenge to me. Because listeners who have heard me on other podcasts know that I'm well known for being a big fan of the Saw franchise and knowing it very well. And my favorite movie is The Blair Witch Project. So any chance I get, I basically will bring up those movies. So now I'm digging deep in my brain, trying to figure out a way to impress you guys with some facts to connect these movies. Unlike Saw and The Blair Witch Project, which were both made on shoestring budgets, this was John Carpenter's first studio picture. And it was the first film he made that didn't have an indie-type budget, and he ended up going over budget. But you can really tell, you think about movies he did before where there was more suggestion of what to be afraid of. Yes,
so
Matt, you have a thought.
Yeah, I do have a thought. Well, it's actually just a question for you.
Okay.
I'm not super familiar with John Carpenter's career. So what things did he do before this that were indie type things?
Halloween and The Fog, Escape from New York, which Escape from New York is a little bit of a different vibe.
But yeah, man, Halloween.
Yeah. So in that, the fear is all suggestion of the shape. You know, there's some violence, but you go back and look at that as one of the first slasher movies, and there's not really a lot of like in-your-face violence. And then you go to The Thing, where he has a bigger budget. And sometimes in horror, the horror is in what you don't see. And I would say that that is the case in the Blair Witch Project. And see, here I'm just riffing. I'm just going off the cuff here, making these connections. But in The Thing, the horror is absolutely in what you do see.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really stunned how much is on screen here, right? We watched, I watched Jaws not too long ago for the 4th. And, you know, that's sort of the classic, like, what you don't see type of movie.
Absolutely.
And this one, it's all out there. And it's super creepy. Like, it absolutely pays off. Like, God bless Rob Bottin, because holy cow, is this stuff creepy and terrifying. And when in doubt, if your puppet isn't creepy enough, make it wet. That appears
Break
to be
out
the
KY
one,
jelly,
the
man,
one real
that
lesson.
will,
Buckets
and
of
just-
KY jelly.
now, I will say,
Yes.
though, that this had, there was another aspect of it that makes it effective. Like, it's not just the monster. It's the fact that the monster might already be you, right? It's that there's a psychological thriller aspect of this story that really pushes it beyond just being a monster movie. Because if it was just a monster movie, you could maybe take it or leave it, some of the special effects. You know, like a lot of the, I don't know, towards the end, the stop motion effects, you know.
Some of the
Yeah,
stop
you kinda
motion's
see
a
those, right?
little clunky.
But the psychological aspect of it is what really, to me, makes this a superlative movie. It's the idea that you're trying to figure out. It's the mystery. It's how do you tell if a perfect imitation is an imitation? That's the core of this movie.
Yeah.
And if you fail, the world dies. And I think that's really spectacular.
Yeah, it's got stakes. It's got tension, like mental or emotional tension. And it's not big on jump scares in this movie, but that jump scare in the blood test sequence, oh my God, I lost it a little bit.
One of the best of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
It's because everybody's so like casual, and they set it up with just a few like normal blood tests, and then of course it's followed up with, and there's 2 guys tied to the couch with. They really didn't think this through.
Exactly.
Right?
What if they were? Yeah. What if they were? What happens? Yeah. So one of the guys who ends up being a thing. I guess one of the first things. The guy who has the heart attack, and that's an interesting thing. The Thing ate a guy who had a bad heart, and so the Thing also has a bad heart.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that, but that's so true.
And then it forces it to
so
like
creepy.
transform into something else, and it's such a good, like, there's so many layers to this whole thing, and a lot of that stuff I didn't pick up until repeated viewings. But I've probably seen this movie, maybe 10 times.
I definitely watched it twice
really?
this week. I was
Good,
Oh yeah.
good.
Well, I wanted to make sure I was ready for Ariel.
Yeah,
You know?
ready for Ariel. Ariel. So, what else strikes you about this? About it? I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not often we have a guest.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. And thank you. You know, I want to acknowledge that you brought on a woman to talk about this movie. This is a very male movie.
Male.
It's extremely masculine movie. And I think that's an important aspect of it. I think that's on purpose. So, you know, the only female voice you get in the movie is the chess wizard, which gets called a cheating bitch and then killed quite swiftly. Voiced by Adrienne Barbeau, who was John Carpenter's wife at the time.
Oh, wow.
They divorced a couple of years later. I'm not saying there's a connection, but there's not a connection. There was one woman on the production crew who was pregnant, and like the conditions were just too awful in the snow for her to stay, so she ended up having to leave. So then the production was like all male. So we are talking top to bottom. This movie is very male and very masculine, and I think that's important. I see it as it's about like breakdown of trust and communication amongst males. And it's also like, in a situation where several of them are trying to take on a leadership role, they're all in a work situation. It's not like you're there with your best buds, but it's also this crazy work situation that most of us won't ever find ourselves in, where, you know, you're living in tight quarters with everybody. And so I think, had this been a group of all women or a group of mixed genders, like, it could have been, I'm not saying it would have been better or worse or anything, but it could have been very different. But I think the fact that these are men dealing with men is really important to the way the story goes.
Yeah,
I wonder
for
if
sure.
there's something else that's about, speaking of that all-male fear, there is a fear of, like you said, losing control, but also of being penetrated, of having something inside you.
Absolutely.
That is, that maybe would be different coming or having a female point of view. Now, Ariel, Matt, you probably haven't seen the prequel to The Thing that came out probably 12 years ago.
I haven't
You
yet
haven't
either. I'm saving it for this
Okay,
winter.
because there's a female lead in that, and I'd be curious to see how you feel about that. Basically, they go and it's a movie about the Norwegians that are all dead. And
Oh, that makes sense.
Does it?
Yes, yeah. There's a whole story there that we haven't told.
But we already know we already know the outcome of it. I guess I don't know. I saw it once and wasn't
the dog
impressed.
gets away.
So do lower your expectations if you see
okay.
it. But I think that might be an interesting.
I'm just excited to have Ariel back this winter. That's all.
I mean,
whatever you guys want.
I don't know if we're gonna watch the prequel episode. But it's interesting there's moments where there's so much that they're thinking about, like there's one guy at one point, the Wilford Brimley character is kind of the only one who knows what's going on, and so he starts taking, instead of talking about it, because who can you trust? Because who can you trust? He takes it upon himself.
75% chance that somebody's already infected. Yeah.
And so he takes it upon himself to destroy like the equipment and the transportation and the helicopter, so that these people can't get off or communicate for help off of the continent and get help. So in order to kind of hopefully contain the alien within Antarctica at least. But it's interesting because from other people's perspective, from the not Wilford Brimley perspective, he's a crazy loon and must be stopped. And because of that, they put him away and actually put him in harm's way to become then an alien himself.
Yeah, how did he get infected? I couldn't figure that out.
I'm not sure. I think some alien, some thing just got to him.
That's true. It only takes like a couple of cells.
Yeah,
or something,
which is a whole other thing too. I worry about, because they're in there in the bloody thing. Like they bring this thing into the lab and are digging around in it with latex gloves. And at one point he doesn't even have gloves on, and I'm like, there's your infection right there.
Well, this is pre the AIDS epidemic too.
Well, almost.
It's right. Yeah, the AIDS epidemic was going on.
Yeah, it started in like 1980. Yeah.
So there was a lot of public AIDS panic going on when this movie came out, and those parallels have definitely been drawn, although John Carpenter says that wasn't the intention.
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to be. I think that can be there. You can have a situation of like convergent evolution of ideas,
absolutely,
without having to have it be an intentional thing. But it is a scary thing to, like, we just went through a pandemic where you can't control a thing you can't see, right? And so I think that's part of what makes this so scary. I do want to say, and Matt, you could probably speak to this too, the score by Ennio Morricone is really effective on this.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's super 80s, but I really dig it. I love Ennio Morricone, and it's, I think we've talked before about how I don't usually have a lot to say about scores unless they're really getting in the way, and this one absolutely does not. It really builds tension nicely and everything. So I'm going to give you another one of my reads about this movie right now. For an Antarctic research station, there is a stunning number of flamethrowers around. Just really a lot of flamethrowers. A lot of fuel, a lot of flamethrowers. I would think the number of flamethrowers that if I was packing for a trip to the Antarctic, I would pack no more than one flamethrower.
Well, I mean...
Well, but if every guy brings one, doesn't that then mean there are 12?
Right, and how else are you going to thaw out your snowcat? You know?
And your breakfast.
It's a BYOF situation, Matt.
Bring your own.
I mean, you guys are joking, but I feel like I would probably want some ability to make fire if I'm going.
I retract my earlier remarks.
There you go.
Yeah. It's interesting that this is like kind of towards the beginning of their time in Antarctica, supposedly, because, psychologically you'd think, hey, maybe we want these people already kind of strung out and on the edge, but they're mostly in good mental health before people start turning into tentacles.
Yeah, and I think that's that story-wise is much more effective to have a bigger arc. Right? It's everything's normal until you get one little thing that goes wrong, and it just completely obliterates any semblance of society, which I think is fantastic.
Right, like it's more extreme to see Wilford Brimley go bananas and smash everything up when he was okay. Right. Which Donald Pleasance was considered for that role, and that would have been a lot of fun, I think.
Wasn't he in Body Snatchers? Or am I thinking someone else?
That's Donald Sutherland.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah, but still, good actors all around.
Interesting.
John Carpenter told Kurt Russell that MacReady had this backstory that was never going to be on screen, that MacReady was a Vietnam vet. And so now that I know that, I can kind of like see that or like feel that coming out of MacReady. But they specifically didn't want to have to say it on screen because it wasn't going to be something that would have come up organically necessarily in conversation. But John Carpenter wanted that sort of energy to MacReady.
Sure.
Kind of. He's like, when you first see him, he's drinking scotch in the middle of the day, wrecking his favorite toy. Like, he's maybe not okay at the start of this, but he's tamping it down.
He's got his own shack, like, away from everybody else.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really interesting character. Yeah, he's off separated from everyone else. And yeah, he does kind of have those, well, and frankly, he's a helicopter pilot in 1982. I mean, that, most of those guys are probably going to have some military experience at that, at that time.
Yeah.
So,
and I like that he wasn't like scarred from the war, like had all this angst and stuff like that. My uncle is actually, or was the most decorated helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he came home and survived the war and started a family and all that. So by all accounts was fairly okay until he. I never met him. He actually got killed by a drunk driver after he survived the war and got back. It was awful.
My God.
That's
wow.
Yeah, they're making a documentary about him. So they're working on that right now. But yeah, man, I loved Kurt Russell's fun to watch, and MacReady was a fun character.
Yes.
He makes it seem so effortless, like he doesn't seem like he's trying at all, but man, he's just magnetic. So this is so dumb to two horror movie fans, but I'm a huge fan of Overboard.
Oh, okay.
Goldie Hawn and Kurt
great.
Russell. Yeah, and I just remember watching that as a kid on TV and just absolutely loving it, and it's just because he's fun to watch.
There's a reason he's a movie star. Absolutely. Do you have any other things you want to cover before we move into ratings?
I have one question for both you guys. At the end of the movie, do you think Childs or MacReady or neither of them are the thing?
Or both, I suppose.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that MacReady is not the thing. and I want
to believe that they're not. I want to believe that they're not. I understand why they're skeptical of each other, but
right.
oh,
I think it's
God.
better
That's
if they're
tough,
not.
Ariel.
I think it's better if they're not, but neither of them can trust the other at all. There is a comic book and maybe also a video game that was a direct sequel, but the comic book picks up exactly where this left off, and I cannot remember what happened. I read it when it came out, but it came out like, I don't know, in the late 90s. And I can't remember what exactly happens. I think they get rescued by some sort of military team and the like Marines or something, and I think Childs ends up being infected.
So if it builds off the alternate ending that was shot to this movie where MacReady survives, then I don't know in the comic book if Childs was the thing or not, but there's an alternate ending shot where MacReady gets rescued and is alive and not the thing.
But Childs is not.
So it might have been building on that. I think he's dead, maybe.
Oh, where they might have found him like in the explosion or something like that.
Yeah.
It makes some sense, and but it also I do like that they resolve that a bit. There aren't a lot of loose ends in this movie. You know, there aren't a lot of things where you're like, oh, I'm very unsatisfied by this thing that they never answered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in addition to a lot of flamethrowers, there are also a lot of just straight up explosives in this research facility. It's really very impressive.
Is that busting through the ice though? Like part of what they're doing is digging through like ancient ice, right? So
yeah, but I think you usually just core it, right? I don't know.
You're the scientist, Matt. You better tell me because I'd be out there with a flamethrower.
They definitely core it. And
is it like ice fishing where you have an auger?
It's like an auger.
But is this?
I
mean, maybe were things different back then? Like this is the old days when they just blew stuff up.
Also, the guy who's the fire suit, the guy who's a flameman, he just busts through the wall, which is clearly just like one sheet of drywall. I love that. I love the idea that you've got this research facility where it's like negative 50 degrees out and there's just like one sheet of drywall between you and the outdoors. Like that's very efficient.
Well, it's high tech. It's NASA. You know, NASA designed
it's
stuff.
NASA. It's NASA drywall.
This is going to keep you it's space age polymers, Matt.
So they built that set in the spring, let it snow all over it so that the snow was naturally, built up on there. Filmed most of the movie, blew it up at the end, and then filmed the Norwegian part. It's all the same set. It's just they used the blown up one at the end to be like, oh, the Norwegians are here.
That's very smart. Speaking of fire, though, going back to Matt's flamethrower criticism, I don't think they burned things enough.
I would agree with that. They burned things a lot, but, for something that supposedly can regenerate from a few cells, I think there needs to be more intense.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And I think with an explosion, you risk blowing the thing all over the place.
Yep, I agree. These guys have not slept for like 48 hours, and their like nerves are fried. So I think they're not always necessarily making the best choices. They're just brute forcing their way through it to the end.
And I did think I have thought about this probably too much, but I do think that like the reason they dug up the alien that was crawling out of the spaceship was because it was a thing. It was a physical big body, right? But if you're going around investigating this lost Antarctic base, you're not going to dig up every little piece of flesh that you see to analyze it. So they might be frozen forever in the snow of the Antarctic, and so therefore we still might be safe. All right, well, let's move on to some rates. Rates this bad boy.
Ratings. Well, let's see. As the newbie here, I get to rate it first. This is a very, very highly rated movie for me. I'm debating between a 9 and a 10. There are maybe just a few issues that make it feel like not a 10 to me.
Like what?
But, well, like some of the stuff is, why do they have so many explosives around, and why do they have so many flamethrowers, and this dog seems very happy for being shot at, and plus I just don't like a movie where a dog is shot on screen, even though it's like a puppet or whatever it is. Like it's pretty rough for me. So I'm gonna say this is a great movie that is also a 9.
I'm sorry if I talked you down to a 9 by asking you to elucidate your criticisms. This is a 10 for me, easy. This is for me. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It holds up some 40 years later, and I think that's really incredible. So, Ariel, how about you?
10 out of 10 flamethrowers.
So many
nice.
flamethrowers.
This is one hot movie. I do. Yeah. I do. Not only is it a 10 for me, but it's just it is something I show to every boyfriend who hasn't who comes along. It was Matthew, my last boyfriend. It was one of his favorite movies, so we already had that in common. But yeah.
Ariel, it's been lovely talking to you about John Carpenter's The Thing. I really appreciated your expertise and your help. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for letting us expose ourselves to you.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a blast. Anytime you want to chat horror movies, literally just anytime.
I wasn't sure that Matt was going to be open to liking a horror movie, so now that I know he is, we might be able to explore this a little more often. But before I let you go, one question, Ariel. Do you, when you talk about this movie to other people, do you call it John Carpenter's The Thing, or do you just say The Thing?
I usually just say The Thing.
Yeah, me too.
Unless I'm talking to another horror fan who I think is going to call me out about it, then I might say John Carpenter's The Thing. But to most people, The Thing is 1982 John Carpenter.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and it's the Thing in on Wikipedia. It's The Thing 1982 film. It's not called John Carpenter. I don't know. I don't. And even on the poster, is it called John Carpenter? Oh, I guess it is. I'm looking at it right now.
Still, though, it's like, calm down, everybody.
Well, yes, exactly. Well, let's see if we can get Matt into some more horror movies as we go. I'm not honestly a huge horror movie, so very few of my favorite films will be on that list. So we'll see what comes down the pike.
Yeah, if you ever want to do like a spooky season special or something.
I would love to see what your favorites are if you want to send those to me, and make some recommendations for things that we should watch on the show by emailing us at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com or going to our Facebook page and commenting on one of our posts.
I might just do exactly that.
Yay. Hey, Ariel, how can people find you on socials?
Yeah, you can find me on all the socials at Ari_Hellraiser. Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky. I think that's all of them. Who knows where we're going to land?
That's great.
Find me there.
And that's a great tag, a great handle too. I had him watch Hellraiser, and as one of our first movies.
Yeah,
it's so good. I can't. I won't do that to us here at the end. I won't derail us. But Hellraiser is a damn perfect film about a woman who just wants to get laid.
Yep.
Right? Yep. I did in fact like it. So if you haven't listened back to that, it was a good one.
I'll go listen to that one.
All right, Travis. Well, we're alone now.
I think we're alone now.
I think we're alone now. Yes.
Doesn't seem to be.
And you
Ariel around.
Ariel.
I know.
So, but you got to listen to the Magnetic Fields, which means I got to listen to the Magnetic Fields. I gave you a playlist off of an album called 69 Love Songs. Is it a dumb joke? Yes, it is. Is it also an incredible musical achievement? Yes, it is. The Magnetic Fields in 1999 released an album, 3 discs, 23 songs per disc. Every single one of them is a love song. This is a very impressive achievement. The Magnetic Fields are a band that are primarily the brainchild of an a singer-songwriter named Stephen Merritt. He's known early on in the Magnetic Field's career for using a lot of synthesizers. They went through a phase where they didn't use any synthesizers at all, but this is still in synthesizer phase. It's got ukulele. He's got a very impressive baritone, which is a little bit unusual for most modern music. Most singers these days that become popular are tenors, but he's got a really nice baritone and a decent range. Travis, I love this music because he is so clever. I love the wordplay that he goes through and the variety of music that's on here. Is everything super successful? Not always, but man, does he go out on some limbs and stick some landings. So this playlist is, I think, 12-ish songs out of the 69. I will say, personally, I like about 55 of them, which is a very, very high hit rate.
Wow.
It's a very, very high hit rate, but there are some dogs in there for sure. So
we are only listening to a small portion of the 69 songs. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to give you the whole thing. So what did you think, Travis?
Well, Matt, I agree with just about everything you said on that. I will say that when I started listening to this, so I've listened to this a couple of times now, and I think that when I first put it on, I maybe listened to the wrong song first. Like, I didn't start with Absolutely Cuckoo, which is the first song on the playlist.
Sure.
I think I might have started with something further along. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, I might have accidentally hit shuffle or might have pushed the wrong button or whatever. And the song that I played starts very energetically, and there's some good energy to it. And I think that a number of these songs had some really good energy and some and I did appreciate the musicality of them. Mm-hmm. And these songs check a lot of my boxes as far as being able to understand the lyrics, having a good mix of song versus music, and you're right, the lyrics are interesting and clever, sometimes a little simplistic, but mostly pretty good. I feel like maybe there's a couple of them that could have stood for like one more pass, one more edit,
sure,
or have a friend look at it and give you some feedback. But if you're trying to write 69 love songs, if that's the goal, which honestly, that whole thing completely went over my head. I wasn't even aware. Although I did remember thinking while I was listening to, boy, this is a lot of songs about love and relationships. But I think my brain was like, yeah, aren't most songs about love and relationships? So yeah, I'll give you all of that. I would not call this guy a baritone, or at least he doesn't usually exist in the baritone range. Most of his singing is in a bass range. It's very low. It's, I'm gonna sing a song, and you don't need to know what it's about, 'cause I'm gonna be singing way down here. And I'm like, it reminds me a lot of Johnny Cash, who I don't like. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, no.
Oh God.
I do ready to burn a ring of fire. I'm like, no. I don't know. And in this case, it numbed my brain. And so that, this whole problem that we have, I don't know how much of this you're leaving in about how I messed up which album we were listening to. I had listened to this album, this playlist, but had forgotten it because I think it numbed my brain. And I had a similar experience when I was listening to it again. It was hard for me to appreciate the way he sings. And it's because I think the way he sings sounds so dour. I don't know if the word sonorous is the right use right now, but that's the thing that kept on popping into my head, where it was like...
Define sonorous. Imposingly deep and full. Wow, Travis.
There
nice
you go. So
word.
Yes, that is the word that popped into my head, and imposingly deep and full is the absolute perfect way to describe this guy's singing. Now, you know when you were doing your album and there's a couple of songs where you put your wife in to sing, and I was like, immediately I was much more into your music when that happened.
Yeah.
The same thing happens here. There's a couple of songs toward the end where, and I don't remember which song, is it Crazy for You But Not That Crazy, or
no, Kiss Me Like You Mean It has a woman. Papa
that was a good
Rodeo
one,
has
although it was
woman.
very short, and I wish... Kiss Me Like You Mean It is a really good song, and it's got a great hook. It's only 2 minutes long. They needed to build out. It's like when I write a sketch and it's like, wouldn't it be funny if a guy had to go to the doctor to get his finger cut off, but it's his pointy finger, so he doesn't want to get it cut off, but I don't do anything else with it.
Travis, I gotta
Kissing
say,
Like You
when
Mean
it
It
comes
was
to
like.
song length, you have very, very specific requirements. You really do.
2 minutes is too short. Like 3 to 5 minutes is probably a good sweet spot, and more if you have a really good song. But make it a nice meal, and not just a snack, but also not like a banquet. Nobody wants a banquet. That's gonna fill you up too much. Anyway, I was really into, here's what I actually was thinking whilst I was listening to this music, is that I would have loved to hear your wife sing these songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you could cut out this guy's voice and just do the instrumentals as is, which were delightful, and have some female with a beautiful voice singing these same songs, I think I would have loved them even more. Now, I didn't dislike them by any stretch.
Okay.
I disliked him singing them.
So Stephen Merritt is kind of an interesting character. I don't know if you picked up on this. Because there's such a wide range of songs, he's writing about so many different situations. Some of these are humorous, some of them are serious, some of them combine the two. Stephen Merritt is gay.
I was wondering about that, because there is a song in there that
where he talks about
says,
how he's going to make his boyfriend his wife. Yeah.
Right. So I was kind of curious. I was like, well, that's a weird turn of phrase. To say, have the boy be my wife. Mm-hmm. But So okay, great.
Well, and he does a lot of that same type of reversal that Melissa Etheridge used to do. Before Melissa Etheridge came out, she always talked about she would reverse the point of view of the song, so it would be like, oh, don't run around with other women, right? And when you say something like that, that is inherently like neutral when it comes to the gender of the person that's doing the picking, right? It could be that you're singing to a man saying don't run around with other women. It could be you're talking to a woman saying don't run around with other women. And he does that sort of rhetorical trick a lot on here. He's the song that I'm thinking of is The Luckiest Boy on the Lower East Side, or Luckiest Guy on the Lower East Side, is a great sort of, it doesn't define it, right? It's just, I'm the luckiest guy on the Lower East Side because you want to go for a ride. And there's all these other guys that you could be interested in, but you're interested in me. And the gender of the person that wants to go for a ride is never defined. And so it could be a boy, it could be a girl.
Isn't it?
And he uses that rhetorical trick a lot. Yeah.
Interesting. I guess, I do. That was one of the songs where I did appreciate the lyrics. Although, again, it was one of those where I was like, I wish they'd done like one more pass on these lyrics just to clean them up a little bit. But yes, very, very clever. And I liked the rhyming scheme. But because, it's not she wants to go for a ride, it's you want to go for a ride.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I didn't peg that, and I think maybe I would have thought more about that if it had come after. When my boy walks down the street.
Yeah,
so,
it's just a very subtle thing, and it's not like super duper out there. And because he's inhabiting different stories, right? Not all of the characters are gay, right? So the last song is my favorite. It's called "Papa Was a Rodeo," and the way that is set up, it appears to be a gay relationship for most of the song, and it's not until the woman comes in on the fourth verse that you realize, or sorry, the fourth chorus, that you realize that this is actually a heterosexual relationship.
Interesting. Yeah, and she was refreshing when
Right?
she did come in.
Oh God, Travis, every single time I listen to that song, I just get chills. This album is great. I think it's flawed because there's a significant number of songs that are like, okay, we got to get up to 69, right? But that song, to me, is one of my favorite songs of all time. "Papa Was a Rodeo." Just the economy of storytelling, the sort of subtle shifts in your perspective as you go through the song. It's a beautiful story. It's like got a wide sweep to it, and it's pretty, right?
Yeah.
And then there it is at the end, and it just kind of kicks you in the gut. It's so good.
Yeah, and yeah, these songs are very well crafted. I will absolutely give you that. And not only just writing wise, but the music is good. The you know
The structure.
the things that aren't the voice, the things that aren't the singing, the instrumental. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a little heavy on the ukulele for your taste. I don't know.
No.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what? It was one of those things where I almost pegged you for what's the word? Not catering to me.
No, catering
But like
to you. I like
pandering.
it.
I almost
Pandering
pegged you for pandering to me for including the ukulele.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was. I appreciate a little ukulele, as I've previously established. So
right.
yeah, absolutely won't hold it against.
Well, I'm
that.
almost ready to rate, but I did want to call out one song here specifically. Did you recognize the song Grand Canyon?
Yeah, well, I did recognize that. I was going to ask you. That was going to be the question I was going to ask you right now. Is that are any of these covers, or have they been covered by someone else? Because one of them, at least, was very familiar.
Yes, it was familiar because it was covered by Panko Stankhole on their debut album, Outhouse.
Oh, is that why I recognized it?
Yes,
Okay, interesting.
I did Grand Canyon on Outhouse, and I love it. And I paid, enjoy your $3, Stephen Merritt. I paid my mechanical royalties.
Nice.
To get the rights to the song.
Well, now I'll have to listen to them back to back.
Oh yeah, well. I listen to them back to back occasionally, and I do prefer the Magnetic Fields version.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anyways,
do you want me to rate first? Or you? I'm not going to give it a bad rating.
New guy always gets to rate.
Okay, I'll be honest. This is not something I'd probably listen to again just because of his voice. I just didn't like his voice. But I will give the album as or the playlist at least as a whole probably a solid 6 from me. It's good. I am glad to have been exposed to it, but it's probably not my thing in the long term.
All right. Well, I feel a little silly because I've been giving out 10s left and right lately on the things that I've given you. I guess this is the function of me, getting more comfortable with the podcast and getting more comfortable with presenting you stuff that I really, really love. But I got to give this a 10 as well, man.
That's great. I can, and I like that I'm getting a really good idea of what your tastes are. And I think it's clear that our musical tastes are not the same, which I think is fine. And I think we've known that since college. When I was listening to a lot of Madonna and Michael Jackson, and still do, and you were introducing me to the likes of the Cranberries and the those kind of people.
Yeah, so. For sure. Well, that was a lovely, lovely chat about the music. What do you have for me next week, Travis?
Oh, you know what? So I've been thinking about this, and I have a movie that I have wanted to see again. I remember liking it a lot when I first saw it. It is an interesting evolution of a filmmaker that I really appreciated. And that filmmaker is Edgar Wright. And he was known for doing Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, famously. And he did another in kind of that trilogy called End of the World, which I didn't love so much. It was like an alien invasion movie. But he has a style that is so deliberate and specific. It's like, you know how you see a movie and you know it's a Wes Anderson movie? Maybe you don't.
Yeah,
but
no, I do.
He's one of those directors that has a style, and it's eclectic. And so I want you to watch Baby Driver, which is kind of his take on a car chase action movie. And I really liked it when it came out. It stars Ansel Elgort, that's his name. But John Barenthal's in it, John Hamm's in it. But it also has an appearance by Kevin Spacey. Not just an appearance, I think he's the villain, if I remember correctly. And but it's a fun movie. It really it intersects action and driving chase scenes with music, and it times everything so well. And I just want you to pay attention to the filmmaking and the cuts and the editing and those kind of things, where every choice is very specific. It's not a movie that was made in the edit. The edits were made in the filming. And I think that's going to be interesting. I only saw it once, so I'm not super familiar, but I really am interested to revisit it. It came out in 2017, and so it's a few years old.
Awesome. Well, Travis, we're getting heavy this week. Heavy. We're going to give you the band Muse. Are you familiar with Muse?
No, but I did create a web series called The Musecast.
Oh, that's right. You did. Yeah. Well, this would have been around the same time. So Muse
2007?
Yeah, Muse came up in the mid-2000s. They are a fascinating band. They're one of these bands that I'm always curious about, these bands that come out with their first album and they feel like they made the music to be played in a giant arena, right?
Oh.
Because how do you do that, right? You're playing around with your friends or whatever, right? And you're pretty young, in your early 20s, but somehow you're making this music that's meant to be played in arenas, even though you're playing a club with 300 people in it or whatever, right? I feel like there's just this reach there, this sort of uncontainable self-confidence about creating that kind of music, right? Because you're basically saying to the world, I mean, this is fine for now, but really what I want to do is play the stadiums,
Wow.
And
it's funny because I don't have the context to put that into, I don't know what to think about this, what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm interested.
Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next week. So this is it's pretty heavy adjacent. I would say it's pretty bassy. You might want to try to listen to this on a speaker, at least after your initial listening. If you find that you don't like it on the earphones, which I've noticed for some bass heavy music, you don't like listening to it on the pods, just give it a listen, maybe through your computer speakers, and see if it's not a little more manageable that way.
Okay.
But yeah, it's generally fast-paced. Some of it's pretty epic. There's a song called Knights of Sidonia that had a little bit of a Bohemian Rhapsody moment. I think you'll find this interesting even if you don't necessarily like it. But you might like it. I just don't know.
Okay. It's possible I'll like it. But I look forward to finding it interesting, at least.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Travis. Well, thank you for exposing yourself to me on this very special episode.
Oh, thanks for exposing yourself to me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right, I'll see you next week.
This wasn't our very special episode, though.
Well, it was also very special because we had a visitor.
It was extra special.
Oh, an extra. Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. It's an extra special episode. Hey, write us an email at exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook, Exposing Ourselves. Do all the fun things. I'm doing all the fun things because I knew you were going to yell at me if I didn't. And interact with us, and please rate us on the service that you listen to our podcast on. Travis, I will see you next week.
Goodbye.